When you come for a US warship, you better not miss, because you won't get a second chance. At 0200 local time on January 14, 2024, a modified anti-ship ballista missile streaks upward from a mobile launcher in Houthi, Yemen. At a speed of 3.4 kilometers per second, in less than a minute it will intercept its intended target, the USS Laboon. As it continues skyward, the missile's GPS guidance system locks onto pre-programmed coordinates that an Iranian ship in the Red Sea passed along to them. The Houthi operators, shielded in a reinforced bunker 2 miles from the launch site, monitor telemetry data through encrypted Iranian communication systems. While they grin with excitement at the thought that they may finally hit a US ship, they don't realize that the missile's inertial navigation system is drifting by 0.5 degrees. While not enough to be noticeable now, this minor deviation will have major consequences as the weapon arcs toward the Gulf of Aden. The missile you see screaming towards the Laboon is a modified Iranian Khalij-Fars missile the Houthis have repurposed into an anti-ship missile. Due to its maximum range of just 186 miles, Houthi operators must position launchers dangerously close to the coastline. And while this move makes it easier to hit US targets, it also makes them much more vulnerable to US sensors and counter-battery fire. It is a risk they take since they feel this is the best shot they have at the Laboon, since it all comes down to a simple math problem. You see, the missile's circular error probable, a fancy word for its accuracy, is about 150 meters or 450 feet. With the Laboon's length of 510 feet, that means the vessel must either be at anchor or moving extremely slowly to hit. If moving any faster than a few knots, this missile won't have a snowball's chance in hell at hitting anything. Unfortunately for the Laboon, the missile is coming at exactly the wrong time. Although destroyers like the Laboon have 4 massive gas turbine engines that can propel the ship at more than 30 knots, they come with a major downside. While the ship has a fuel tank capacity of 450,000 gallons, at full power, the ship will burn a staggering 6,500 gallons per hour. This means the ship can't run around as fast as it can all the time, or it'll run out of gas pretty quickly. Additionally, running the engines 24 hours a day means at some point the engines have to be tagged out for mandatory routine maintenance. Often, to save fuel and perform this required maintenance, ships like the Laboon will come down to what is called trail shaft. Trail shaft is when all the engines except one are offline. During this time, the ship is severely limited in speed and maneuverability. And it is at this worst possible time the Houthis struck. Back on the Laboon, all is quiet as people are trying to pass the time on an otherwise boring mid-watch. As the ship is steaming along at 3 knots, she is barely moving faster than the current, which essentially means the ship is almost stationary. During this time, the quiet calm of the early morning is shattered as a track from almost 200 miles away splashes across their radar screens. Although not yet picked up on their own sensors because of the distance and foul weather, the crew confirms the quick calculations via their own Aegis combat system that this track is indeed fast, hostile, and barreling straight at them. But how can they shoot something down they can't even see themselves? Thankfully for the Laboon, they are getting an assist from this plane here. This aircraft is the E-2D Hawkeye, and it is currently orbiting the Red Sea at 27,000 feet. Within seconds of the missile's launch, its massive AN/APY-9 radar dome picks up the threat and instantly knows it's a missile due to the contact's course, speed, and flight pattern. With its scan rate of 6 revolutions per minute, the plane can search hundreds of square kilometers of territory at a time and provide updated position data every 10 seconds. The Hawkeye's crew almost instantly began passing the missile's track via Link 16 to the Laboon as the missile climbed. Because the Hawkeye is up something called cooperative engagement capability with the Laboon, the aircraft can keep passing tracks to the destroyer and use this data for a fire control solution, even if the ship can't see it with their own sensors. And although they have the track data, they now have just 30 seconds to respond. As the Houthi missile reaches apogee, or the highest point, it turns over and begins its terminal dive phase. The purpose of this is to conduct what is called a high dive attack. This is when a missile aims to exploit a critical weakness in most ships' defense networks, where barreling from straight over the top will seek a blind spot in the ship's radar. However, the spy radar protecting the Laboon is no ordinary radar, and it easily detects the missile as it begins its descent towards the ship. As it does so, the crew soon realizes that their luck is back in their favor. Remember that 0.5 degree error from earlier? Over the course of its flight, that error has now compounded from just a few feet off track to now roughly 10 miles. But the missile doesn't know this. As it turns over, its onboard accelerometers detect the missile's descent and turn on its active seeker for its terminal phase, searching the GPS coordinates given to it by its Houthi operators. But little did the missile or the Houthis know that the Laboon is nowhere near the spot she was last at. Within seconds of being notified that a missile was inbound, the Laboon's officer of the deck ordered an emergency online start of the engines. When this occurs, many of the processes in the normal startup procedures are skipped so that within 90 seconds, the ship can go from putzing along at 3 knots to now steaming at more than 30. As the ship rapidly gains speed, the Laboon comes about to port to get maximum illuminator coverage on the missile. The purpose of this Mark 99 illuminator is to blast directed radar energy at the missile in the last few seconds of the SM-2's flight, which would be the missile the Laboon would shoot at the threat. Fortunately for the crew, due to the Houthis' inability to build a missile right, they could tell within seconds that it would fly harmlessly overhead and not even come close. About 30 seconds later, the crew sees the missile on the horizon splash harmlessly into the water, 12.5 miles away as they speed away and plan their next move. But first, they'll have to find the launcher, and that is actually much easier said than done. Well, if you're not the US military, that is. Remember that circling E-2D Hawkeye from earlier? Well, now it is going on the offensive. Because the Houthis don't have airborne early warning aircraft like the Hawkeye or satellites, their only way to conduct over-the-horizon targeting and battle damage assessment is via video feed from drones. Because the Hawkeye already knew the general direction the missile came from, it sectored its radar to begin scanning that part of Yemen. Since there are no commercial flights or private planes over Yemen, it is a safe bet that anything flying around that isn't a military aircraft is probably a Houthi drone. And soon, they hit pay dirt. At a range of 342 miles away, the Hawkeye captured a video feed of 4 Houthi drones flying in formation. The Houthis had sent out these drones as a sort of forward observer to see the missile strike. But instead of getting an Instagram-worthy montage, they earned an express delivery of missiles courtesy of Uncle Sam. But before the US could drop warheads on foreheads, there was one more step they had to take. Do you see this satellite? It's called a KH-11 satellite, and will be the pinch pin that helps put this operation together quickly. Right now, it's orbiting about 500 kilometers above the Earth's surface, and it is so advanced that it can distinguish targets as small as 4 to 10 inches at that distance. Put another way, it's like being able to stand in DC and take a look at a Subway sandwich in New York City, since we all know they're always too small. Because of this amazing capability and a variety of high-speed data links, this satellite turns the general bearing and range of the launcher identified by the Hawkeye into an exact set of coordinates within an hour. Now all that is left to do is send the welcome wagon, and it is coming in the form of these jets. At around 0300 local time, the first 2 F/A-18 Super Hornets are roaring off the deck of the USS Eisenhower. 2 more F-18s soon follow them and establish communications with the circling Hawkeye after takeoff. Since the Houthis have now realized their mistake, they want to ensure they aren't mobilizing any more launchers for a second strike, since this would now become the priority target. But as the F-18s make their way towards Yemen, the Hawkeye advises them that the coast is clear and the Houthis aren't trying to play anymore tonight. That is until the F-18s start seeing their displays light up from their ALR-67 Radar Warning Receivers. Located here around the F-18's nose, tail, and left and right stabilizers are these antennas. These are the receivers for the radar warning system that provides 360-degree coverage around the F-18 and can alert the pilot to the bearing of an enemy radar. Although it cannot give an exact range, it does give the enemy radar's signal strength, which the pilot can then use to estimate how far away the radar is. Around that time, the system picks up the telltale frequencies of a Houthi 1S91 straight flush radar tucked in between 2 apartment buildings. Although the system's advanced mission library has stored thousands of the world's most common radar frequencies for instant identification, the pilots still need a positive visual confirmation before making their attack run, because of the rules of engagement. And that is where this system comes into play. This device located underneath the aircraft is called the Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, and it provides positive visual target identification with 1.2 meter resolution at up to 90 kilometers away. This precision allowed pilots to distinguish between legitimate military targets and civilian structures in the densely populated areas where Houthis position their equipment. And with their visual confirmation now completed, the F-18s can begin their attack runs. Once the formation is around 30 miles from the target area, the lead aircraft begins assigning targets. The first one is going to target the launcher, the second the launcher's radar system, the third the command bunker 2 miles away, and the fourth aircraft will serve as a backup if anyone misses. But if not, the fourth aircraft will take out the launch pad the Houthis have set up for their 4 spotting UAVs that have returned from their unsuccessful attack on the Laboon. But although this sounds easy, there is actually a problem. The Houthi launcher is not just sitting in the street between the buildings. The Houthis have commandeered a civilian air raid shelter and turned it into a firing post. Because of this, the Houthis will bring the weapon out to fire and then roll it back into the shelter under the protection of roughly 6 feet of reinforced concrete. Thankfully, the F-18s have a special surprise on board that will cut through the air raid shelter like a hot knife through butter. If you look at their wings, you will see that each of the F-18s has 4 of these 2,000-pound bombs. But these are no ordinary bombs. These are GBU-31 bunker busters, which are just the standard BLU-109 bombs fitted with a GPS guidance kit to make it a precision weapon. And that is what makes them so perfect for this target. Unlike a normal bomb that has a thin metal sheet containing a ton of explosives, this bomb has a 1-inch thick hardened steel case around it that transforms this conventional bomb into a precision jackhammer. With a penetration capability of up to 8 feet, even just one of these is enough to puncture the protective bubble around the launcher. But the bomb does not rely on just its steel case alone. The BLU-109 warhead contains 550 pounds of high explosive that, in confined spaces, creates a big enough blast that exceeds human survivability thresholds by 700%, ensuring the destruction of both equipment and personnel. In addition to this, the warhead has a delayed action fuse, programmable between 0 and 250 milliseconds. Before taking off, the sailors on board the Ike set these to precisely 70 milliseconds, which was just enough time to poke through the top concrete ceiling without burrowing into the floor below. This essentially will create an airburst blast meant to cover an area the size of a football field into an area the size of a small apartment. And it's about this time that the US Navy is knocking at their doorstep. By 03:45, the first GBU-31 reaches its target and punches right through the top of the shelter housing the primary missile launcher site with pinpoint accuracy. The hardened warhead penetrates all 6 feet of reinforced concrete before detonating, and creates a massive internal pressure wave that collapses the entire bunker from within. The second bunker buster impacts the site's radar installation on the street above a few seconds later. However, since the target was above ground, the maintainer had set the time delay fuse to 0, so the BLU-109 essentially became a point detonation weapon. As this is going on, the third aircraft peels off and targets the command bunker inside the cave just on the outskirts of town. Although the Houthis try to evacuate, they can't outrun a bomb moving at just over the speed of sound. With all 3 primary targets destroyed, the F-18s are able to relay real-time video feeds of the strikes to strike group command staff aboard the carrier nearly 75 miles away. With 100% confirmation the sites are destroyed, the Admiral orders the secondary UAV launch point be hit. That is why you see this lone F-18 peeling off the formation and heading straight towards a shallow dirt bunker the Houthis had dug into this parking lot, with the ability to punch through up to 30 feet of loose soil like this. So the roughly 6-foot deep hole the Houthis dug is like trying to stop a freight train with a fly swatter. And we all know how well that would turn out. With all 4 UAVs and their operators now confirmed neutralized, the final bird peeled off from its attack run and raced to join the circling formation overhead before heading back towards the Red Sea. A successful mission of what would soon become one of many in the intensifying Red Sea conflict. Bye for now.